Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Matt and Adam, and we're going to be talking about Fear City, a 1984 film directed by Abel Ferrara. This is part of our, I guess we're doing like an Abel Ferrara deep dive of some kind here. So this is, how many movies have we done? Is this the fourth Abel Ferrara or the fifth? I think it's the fifth. It's the fifth, I think, because we did Miss 45, right? Did we do Miss 45? We did
Bad Lieutenant.
Yeah. We did King of New York, and we did China Girl, right? So this is number 5.
Yes, it's 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's the most of almost any director we've ever done on So anyways, this is kind of an interesting one because and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but this is before China Girl, I think, this film. And it's also after Ms. 45, and so I didn't really know what to expect. And I'm curious what everybody's reaction was to it. I don't know who wants to go first, or if we want to roll to see who goes first. Well, why don't you go first, Matt?
Okay.
Yeah, go, Matt.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is the movie between Ms. 45 and China Girl. So it took him a few years to get some of these movies made, but he was doing television for the networks during that period too. He did 2 episodes, I think, of Miami Vice, and there was one called FBI Stories. I think that was the name of it. He did 1 or 2 episodes of that, which I want to see real badly. I saw the Miami Vice ones, and they didn't stand out. They weren't bad. They weren't, it's Miami Vice. I was never a big fan of it.
It was a formulaic show.
Yeah, it's not Michael Mann's best. It's an enjoyable movie. It's very entertaining. It gives you a pretty good idea of the nightlife in New York City in the early to mid 80s. But it was meant, I guess, to be a disco era story.
Miami
It took
Vice?
a while to get.
Miami Vice.
No, Fear City.
Oh, okay.
It took them a while. It was going to be like Saturday Night Fever or something. It was basically about the Italian American disco subculture in Manhattan at the time, and Ferrara and some of his buddies were really like at the forefront almost of this stuff. They went out and discoed their booties off.
Yeah,
and
I know a guy who did all the lighting work for a lot of the discos in New York in the 70s. Actually, got a lot of stories.
Yeah, that's got to be some great stuff there. This is some of the last days of working class culture, as bad as some disco is, it was, and it was different at the ground level at that time in the late 70s, early 80s. There was a lot more to it.
Well, I would just say about disco too, I just had a thought, which is that some of the, because I'm definitely more from like the rock and metal side of the spectrum, and disco has always been sort of something that you were supposed to view with suspicion. But one thing I've noticed is that some of the best rock songs actually have a disco element to them. Do you know what I mean? Like Pink Floyd in The Wall, they use disco. You know what I mean? And there's there's Queen songs where they're clearly using disco, and there's like a lot of other songs that don't even remotely sound disco-like that have this disco element to them. So I think it definitely, and Blondie has songs that are kind of veering into disco too. But I'm sorry, go on, Matt.
Even Black Sabbath.
Yeah, Black
Sabbath even used a disco riff. They used one on Technical Ecstasy on a song, and people were not happy about it.
Well, the one thing is, it's like a one album that you probably, if you're gonna bring it up in defense of disco, that's got to be like the most hated Ozzy era Black Sabbath album, I think. Technical Ecstasy.
I love it.
No, I'm not knocking
it,
but it's a very divisive album. I'll put it that way.
I find that musicians are a lot less into dividing things up by genre than actual music fans are. It's like musicians usually listen to like a wide range of stuff, and their music fans are like in their box and they hate everything outside the box a lot of times.
You know what it is? Because when I hear disco, like especially get disco guitar, because I was a guitar player, when I hear that, what my ear does is say, well, how are they doing that? Like I know, like I can listen to it and maybe hear the chord, but I can't really understand how they're getting that sound out of the guitar between the rhythm and the chord. You know what I mean? There's some magic going on that you have to understand in order to replicate a genre. And so I think that's how musicians tend to view music when they hear it, is not like, oh God, I got to erect a gate against this stuff. But
how did they do that?
Yeah, how did they do that? And like to Matt's point about technical ecstasy, even if somebody doesn't like technical ecstasy, I think it's pretty clear that some of the stuff they were doing on that album is what eventually got them to stuff like Heaven and Hell, which is a really popular album. So I mean, sometimes too, sometimes bands will put out an album and it's like they're workshopping a sound, and they have to get the sound. You know what I mean? Like it can't all be like everything the audience necessarily wants to hear if they're trying to grow.
I mean, before the podcast started, we were mentioning David Bowie, and like he's someone. It's like he's had his good periods and his bad periods, but he never would have had those later good periods if he hadn't got, I'm going to go do this other thing that his fans hated for a while.
Speaking of that, the thing about Fear City that I thought was interesting when I first saw it, and this is my first viewing, so I've only seen it once. But like on this first viewing, I felt that I could see how this is what led to the other movies that we were watching, the King of New York and China Girl, and I could it's almost like I can see like this is like, it's almost like you can see new muscle tissue growing with this movie, if that makes sense. So I thought that was.
It's got a very formulaic skeleton. I mean, this movie felt to me a bit like those movies that would be like a thriller that would be on Cinemax at 1 a.m. Like, and usually they'd be like really, really poorly directed, really poorly acted. This is like if you gave one of those scripts to someone that was talented, and they did something great with it. But as you say, it's like the things that aren't part of that skeleton, all these little kind of scenes going on with the mob and stuff kind of on the periphery. It's kind of like that's what Ferrara is really interested more than this serial killer guy. And he just kind of, the formula kind of drops off in his later movies after this.
Well, because what's notable is, to me, what I first noticed was the world he creates, like the sleazy underworld that you're inhabiting. And that's what made it fascinating to me. It was like, and you have that guy, I don't know the actor's name, but he's the guy from Godfather 2. The one who comes to Michael and is belligerent at the wedding. And he has that, like, it's not like the other strip clubs. It's almost more of a burlesque style club where like there's like an audience and seats and stuff like that. But the way that they kind of showed you that, then showed you the other clubs, and then showed like this boxing background of the main character, the Tom Berenger character, and you just kind of slowly got this sense of a world that was like an underworld. And I don't know, I liked the setting. I thought that it did a really good job of establishing a setting. And most of it was just kind of hanging out in bars, really, right? Like that was kind of like very reminiscent of like some of the scenes in Mean Streets and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But the other thing is, just to get back to the plot that Adam mentioned, you couldn't have this plot in like any other year, because this was like the karate expert / serial killer just wouldn't exist in this way. Like, you might have a martial artist serial killer, but it wouldn't be done the way it was in this movie in like any year outside of like 1984 to like 1987. There's a very narrow window where karate is treated the way it is in this movie.
Watching the movie, I was like, I can't wait to hear Brendan's take on the martial. I know he's going to have like some relevant. Come on, I shouldn't be interrupting you.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, so okay, just to give people who haven't seen the movie, the bad guy is a karate expert. At first, you're led to believe it's a rival strip club owner or something like that, but then it turns out it's a karate expert who's just, I don't know, he's just killing them so he can practice his karate because he wants to be an instrument of death. Is that the?
I think there's an element too of morality to it. That he considers. At some point, when he's writing his book, it's very very Rorschach from Watchmen, which I think was actually after this. But yeah, I think he's just he's it's the classic thing. I'm going to kill all these whores because they're horrible.
Okay, I missed that line. Okay, so that makes more sense then. But
actually, a quick question before we go on. Because the version I watched was really interesting. I watched it on Amazon Prime. I don't know if everyone else did.
That's where I watched it.
On Amazon. Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting because you could tell there's a uncut version and a theatrical cut, but it was clearly the uncut version I was watching, but there were all these scenes where the quality of the picture would just become a lot worse. So it was like you were knowing every time a scene was taken out of the theatrical cut, it became clearly obvious because the film quality would change.
Okay, I didn't notice that. I saw the one on Amazon that you rent. I didn't see the one with ads, and so I don't know if that's a different one.
No, that was what I did. I rented it. Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe
were there two options? Was there a theatrical and an uncut version, or was there just one option?
If there was, I missed it.
Okay.
I just picked the only option I saw. I didn't know there were two versions till I was watching it, and I'm like, oh, clearly they put these scenes of lower quality film back into the movie. And it just kind of made it kind of fat. Most of the time, it was pretty clear why they took it out. Every now and then, I was like, I'm not quite sure why they deleted those 3 seconds.
Okay. I mean, that was on the martial arts, to answer your question. I don't know. It's just an interesting period because he's doing very rigid, like exaggerated movements that almost look like they're more part of a form than they're part of natural style of moving. And I think films have moved away from that very rigid approach to, and it's also not like, if you go back to earlier movies where it's like Chuck Norris, he is doing those like traditional karate moves, but he's doing them in a more fluid way on camera that doesn't look like that. But by the mid 80s, I feel like you have movies doing this kind of thing. And also he does weird stuff. Like, I don't know the name of the weapon because I didn't do karate, but I think it's a kama. It's like that like chicken sickle weapon. It's like a stick with like a hook on it at the end. I think he killed somebody with one of those at one point, right? Wasn't that one of the weapons he used? He uses some kind of traditional weapon to commit one of the murders, I think. And it's just really weird and fascinating. That's all I really thought about it. It's just like, because it's almost like you, and he wasn't played by Jean-Claude Van Damme, but it's like Jean-Claude Van Damme was intruding into this movie about a gritty, sleazy criminal underworld where karate doesn't even seem to exist. Do you know what I mean? And then he brings with him all of the rules of karate genre into the movie, and that's what makes it just really feels weird. I feel like in the 80s I would have totally it wouldn't even have registered, but now seeing a film decades later set in that period, it's sort of like, oh, this is like weird 80s karate logic that doesn't exist outside of this decade.
Yeah, it felt weirder too because, as you say, a lot of the scenes in the clubs and so on had that very naturalistic feel Ferrara has, where you're very much in the real world in his movies. So just having this, karate serial killer in a Ferrara film felt really strange to me. But
and I will say the actual fight scenes. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
He didn't have total control over this film. No.
Yeah, that was clear.
On the actual fight scenes, like when he actually does fight the karate guy, I did feel like they still handled it fairly well in terms of it. When he's punching him, it's not. Yeah. The scene where I kind of was like, what the hell, is when he kicks his friend to the ground and the guy ends up in a coma. And it was like, well, that did not look like a lethal attack to me in any remote way. Like, I get it. You could land on the concrete funny, but just by movie logic, like landing on the concrete, it was the kick. It wasn't the, so I don't know. It just felt a little odd. I like the scene, though, where they were beating up the guy in the kitchen. The guy that
was good. Yeah. That was an excellent fight scene. Yeah.
And it was a cool, I don't know, just the fact that they had the wrong guy. It was kind of a Summer Sam type thing. I don't know if you remember the movie Summer Sam, but it was that sort of thing. It's just like, okay, they think they've got the killer, and it's like, they just saw a scalpel in his pocket. It was, he's got a plane ticket. He just got here today or yesterday. It's not him.
That was a big beefy guy too. I mean, it wasn't like it was a good choice they made at this guy who really was someone that was tough for them all to take down.
He was perfect in so many ways because he was, number one, big and beefy. He also had a look where it's like, I believed that he would go to strip clubs. You know what I mean? Like, it was, and also the way he was dressed. He had like this Biff Tannen attire on.
Yes. Biff Tannen, perfect call. Yeah.
He's a very creepy guy.
Yeah, he was very, because you know what it was? You felt like he was a real danger to them if they didn't take him on. You know what I mean? Like he like clearly is bigger, like all that. It just was like he was just a very dangerous looking person. So I don't know, what other aspects of the movie did you guys notice?
As always, it's just
there's
just great. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah. There's yet another David Johansen song in it with Joe DeLeo.
Yeah.
Is that the song that they were playing at the opening? That kind of like rough sounding, like the voice sounded very rough.
Yeah. I suppose it was on the beginning and opening credits. Okay, I believe.
That helped set the tone for me. I heard that, and I didn't know the song, I didn't know the artist, but I felt like, okay, this is setting the mood well for me. Yeah. The one thing I will say is I was expecting it to go to the direction of a King of New York or a China Girl, just because those were the two that were in my mind. This was before that. And so the way it ended was surprising to me too, because I was kind of anticipating like a tragedy, and it's more. It's a
Ferrara movie. It's like I'm like the main character. Both he and his girlfriend survive. What the heck? I didn't make any sense to me.
But I have to admit, I liked the way Billy D. Williams. I mean, it was a very corny line when he asked him, like, you probably think you're some kind of hero, don't you? And then he says no, and okay, Billy D. has said he doesn't like this guy's arrogance, and he just demonstrated humility. So now he says, okay, you might be. It was corny, but I don't know. I found it. Maybe it was because Billy D. Williams was the one delivering the line.
Exactly. I think he was the most poorly written character in a lot of places, but he made it work. I think just because it was an excellent performance.
Yeah, I liked it. Even the thing when he's like looking at the certificate on the wall, just like how he's like.
I know that was beautiful. He's just
he's hilarious.
Yeah. Like I said, there were elements of the character that were really good. I liked the fact that he was this real nitpicky, perfunctory guy. But there were points in the movie where I just didn't understand what he was doing. Like when they hauled him in, and it's just like, I don't know. I felt like, what are you trying to achieve here? I don't know. He was alternating between a really good character and a character I just didn't understand what he was up to at points.
Yeah, I was a little perplexed by that one too, I have to admit. But I don't know. I also liked Tom Berenger in this. I thought that
really good performance. Yeah.
What movie was he in before this? Because I feel like he looked pretty young in this movie. I'm trying to think of movies I've seen him in before that.
Not a lot.
I'm looking it up right now.
I mean,
to me, keep talking.
Platoon would be like, that's like the first movie I remember seeing him in is Platoon. But anyways, I thought he was
good. Eddie and the Cruisers. Big Chill.
Yeah, he's in that. That's the Big Chill. Yeah, I remember him in that.
Yeah. Platoon was the first time
Before
I
that,
remember,
though,
which was 86, 2 years after.
Yeah, that's the
that
one
was
I
a big
remember.
breakout.
Yeah. But I thought this was a good role for him, and I thought I liked the background story of his character, where he was like this boxer who, you know, like killed some guy in the ring, and like he had that sort of hung over him. I liked that he's like with this woman that just, it's a very noir type movie, but he's with this woman that is just like not good news for him. Like, you know, even after the movie ends, it's not, like both him and the other guy, they're both so a part of this sleazy underworld. They're both dating, you know, the women from the clubs, and you can just tell that this is like a you know, you know, like just as an example, his girlfriend is Melanie Griffith, and she's got a heroin addiction, and so, you know,
when she went back on drugs again, I just assumed she was going to be dead. I was like, I thought that was the signal. It's like there's no happy ending. So it is interesting that it ends up with them both alive. But as you say, you're like, this is still not a good situation.
But that's the thing. These are guys who, what I liked about the characters is they're guys who you can imagine their whole lives they're comfortable living in no good situations. You know, they can get comfortable in that, and so.
And the best friend was great too. I really liked the relationship he had with his best friend. That character felt very real to me as well.
Yeah. And I like that they introduced them as, like, at first you think, oh, these guys are going to be like murdering the guy from Godfather 2 owes the money.
Yes.
And so they kick it off with them seeming like really bad guys. And then you realize there's just like a lot more to them than, I mean, and again, I wouldn't say that they're super deep characters, but there's just more shades to these characters than, you know, good guy, bad guy. But I found the relationship between the boxer and the stripper very believable. That was like, okay, I've met that couple many times in the course of my life, and so that was, and you can just you can see why these characters are drawn to each other. You know what I mean? And also I thought, like, you know, I'm not a huge Melanie Griffith fan. I thought she was very, like, well suited to this role. This was like a very good role for her, I thought.
It was. I thought she was very good in this movie.
And go ahead.
I think it's this is right after Body Double, I think.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, was that before this?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's take a look here.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting movie. I would like to do Body Double at some point. That might be a Halloween movie.
Yeah, I watched that a few years ago, and I was like, wow, this I hadn't watched it since the 80s. And I really enjoyed that, so I would like to do that sometime.
But
doing a dive on why am I blanking on the director's name of Body Double?
Brian De Palma.
Yeah, thank you. I've been meaning to go back into watching a bunch of De Palma movies again lately. So, you know, maybe we can do that at some point.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Ray Don Chong was also interesting in this movie, I thought.
Very good. Yeah, I thought so.
It's funny because well, she was in so many things in like the mid 80s, and then she just kind of disappeared. I don't think I really saw her in much after Commando. I don't really remember seeing her in many things. I think like Soul Man was like the last movie. Was that 87? What was that?
Yeah. Maybe.
I also I didn't.
Still working.
I didn't know.
No, she didn't actually. I've got her filmography. It's like she's been working consistently, and she's got two to be announced movies, 22. She's not in anything I've heard of, but she's working.
Okay, so maybe I just didn't see the movies she was in, but I feel like I saw a lot of her in the 80s, and then I suddenly didn't see her anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that was when she was famous. But yeah, I don't know what these things she's in are, but she's working somewhere.
And she's Tommy Chong's daughter, right? Is that?
Yeah, she is.
But yeah, so that was. I mean, I thought most of the casting choices were good, even in cases where, like, if the acting wasn't great, like the person seemed to fit the role. So I thought that, you know, overall the casting seemed good, and I think Billy D. Williams was a really good choice for this movie. That was I well, you know what it is too, like. I just enjoyed seeing a movie where Billy D. Williams had that big of a role.
You know, I know.
It was.
Like I said,
refreshing.
And yeah, so I don't know any other aspects of the movie to go over.
Off the top of my head, I mean, it's a fairly simple movie. But the music, the music's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked. I mean, who was the artist? Who was the artist that you mentioned that did the music?
It's a Hollywood Dolls. And it's what's his name from the
David
Johansen.
David Jason from the New York Dolls.
Dolls. Okay. Yeah, I know the name New York Dolls. I don't really know much of their catalog at all. So but the sound was very distinct. When I heard the opening, I was like, okay, this is obviously a very raw sounding kind of music, and that seems to fit everything that I'm seeing on the camera. So it was like a very perfect blend. And also it had like I don't know, there was something underneath that song that kind of like got your blood flowing a little bit. Do you know what I mean? It was just like that kind of music where it pumped you up to see the movie.
It's exciting.
Yeah. It had that. This is a bad example, but like an Eye of the Tiger type effect. Totally different sound. But
totally.
But yeah, it was,
I guess the only other.
It's an impressive.
Sorry.
Matt. Yeah, it's an impressive movie. It's very entertaining. It's like not as good as China Girl, but it's almost there.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was almost like, in a way, because we watched them in this reverse order, it's like it felt like a little bit of a step down, but it was still a good movie.
It's still great.
It's just that it was like I had just seen China Girl. That was like the last point of reference that I had, and the most interesting thing to me about it was just that I could see some of the DNA that was clearly going to make it into China Girl and into King of New York.
Having already reviewed Miss 45, which was before this, it's like Miss 45 is more ambitious in some ways, is a kind of a vision. This is a little more formulaic, but
it's weird because China Girl and King of New York, they almost combine both of these movies in terms of like vibe. Do you know what I mean? Like, because like you're saying, this movie is very formulaic, and the ending's not surprising, but the thing that like China Girl has a lot of elements of this movie, but it has like the surprise and catharsis of Miss 45. You know what I mean? It's got that like if you know what I mean. It hits emotionally in the same way as Miss 45. But it has the mood and atmosphere of this movie, if that makes sense.
And as far as the only other thing I've got to say is I mean, it's just, as with all of his movies for the most part, it just captures New York so well. I mean, I can't think of anybody that shoots in New York and just gives you a better sense of being in the city at the time the movie is shot. I mean, it just brought back a lot of memories of me visiting New York around that time. I always get that when I watch his movies. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when that musical was playing, and there's just so many little details that just ring true.
Well, I also find that like I'm not from New York, and I probably have some hostility towards New York. So when New York is depicted on a movie screen, I normally don't like it. That's like a surefire way for a film to irritate me, is for them to kind of blare that they're in New York in any way. But what I liked about his movies is I feel like I'm seeing a New York I don't normally see somehow. I don't,
you're not seeing glamorized New York. It's just real New York walking around the city.
Yeah, it's not like I don't know, like it's not like hey, we're New York, deal with it kind of a thing. It's a different.
It's not the Ghostbusters New York. Yeah, or, I love this town. Yeah, yay!
Yeah. So yeah, but I'm. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. Bill Murray's from New Jersey anyway, isn't he?
I don't know.
I don't think he. I don't think he wrote the script, so we can.
Where's Dan Aykroyd's from Canada, right? So wasn't he?
Yeah. I think he wrote it. So yeah, he's full of it. It should be "I Love Toronto," which now where all New York movies are shot.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I like the sense of place that it creates, and it also just feels, I don't know, like there's a lot of scenes where you're like, even if I've never been to New York, but like I've been in a city and been looking at buildings from this vantage point early in the morning on my way to the airport or something. You know, it's just like that kind of, just like very real about the vantage points that he gives you.
Yes, exactly. That's what I like about it. Like I said, when I watch most movies set in New York, they don't make me think about being in New York. It's like you're just watching this movie. It's like, oh, lots of helicopter shots and and stuff like that. Yeah, I just feel like I feel like I'm there watching these movies there at that time.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a place for helicopter shots and jazz music at the beginning of a movie, but yeah, I know what you mean, like that overabundance of aerial shots and things like that.
And I like Ghostbusters too. Just for the record, I'm not trying to bag on it hard, but it's just a strong contrast of, real portrayals of New York versus, Hollywood New York. Yeah. They're just different places.
Well, you know what it is too. When Hollywood does, like when they do this anywhere, they sort of, it's like nothing connects to anything else. It's like, okay, here we are at this one famous location, and here we are at this other famous location.
Yeah.
And people who live there know, like, wait, to get from that location to that one, I got to do all this stuff, and it's not feasible.
Yeah. Someone that lived in New York I not lived in Chicago for a long time. It's like anytime I watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's like, what? Where are they going to get from there? It just, like none of the locations line up when they're going anywhere. It's
so lazy.
What was that, Matt?
Yeah.
So lazy.
Yeah.
They're just so lazy.
Yeah, I would say laziness is a big source of it. Also, I just think it's just, I think there's also a sense of like people don't care. They think the audience is too dumb, or or they're just prioritizing. We need to establish the place, and that takes priority over all these other considerations. But I don't know. I feel like the worst way to establish a place is to show the three most prominent things of the place. You know what I mean? It just
the place that everyone already knows. Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, we're at the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, great. Yeah. Nope. Now we're going to be on the steps of the New York Library. All right. Yeah.
No.
He's just got a very ground level understanding. Not the library, but So I don't know. Those are all my big points on the movie.
Yeah.
Anyone else got any?
I'm pretty. I think I covered everything. I covered everything. I guess the big question. Go ahead, Matt.
It's not like a deep movie. Yeah, it's not a deep movie. It doesn't have like a major big message. It's just entertainment. It is what it is. There's nothing wrong with it.
It's a late night.
But
well, I like Adam's description of it as like a late night Cinemax movie done really well.
That's what I was about to repeat. I was about to go. It's just a particularly good example of that genre.
In fact, I had a similar type of thought where I was like, I didn't think Cinemax, but I thought this reminds me of stuff I saw in the 90s on cable, like that kind of but not bad like that, but just like it had that essence to it.
Most movies like this, or this genre, were made. They just shot it in LA because it's Hollywood, and it had a Miami Vice aesthetic to it. It would have like those kind of houses you'd see in Miami Vice, and lots of neon, and it's basically it's like they'd rent like those kind of locations. So having it in New York gave it a distinction from most of the movies in that genre too.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we've reached the. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, it's not a classic, but it is a fun movie. I enjoy watching it.
Yeah, I like the movie, and it's definitely one that I would like to see again and pay more attention to some of the details. And I could see it also being a movie that grows in enjoyment as you watch it, because you maybe get more acquainted with the karate serial killer guy over time. Do you know what I mean? Like there are details in the movie where it's like I feel like I don't know. I feel like I would like to see this a few more times. But yeah, I think it's been interesting going in reverse. That's the I don't know. That's it. You know, we could have started at Miss 45 and gone on from there, but we started with Miss 45, went to the Bad Lieutenant, and then came and then formed a loop.
Reversed.
So I feel like we probably want to move on to another director after this, and then maybe come back to Ferrara. That might be a good way to do this. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, break it up a bit, because I would like to do more Ferrara, but let's take a break and do something else, and we'll come back to the '90s Ferrara stuff later.
Yeah.
That'd be perfect.
So I think for now that's it, and until next time, we will talk to you later.